Hello and welcome back to my Azure Advanced Threat Protection demo part 2. And if you had a chance to watch my part 1, I promised that will have a very engaging um, live demonstration, and we'll get right into it. Right, so let's just see what the agenda looks like at a high level. So what we would try to do in this demonstration, that we will look into the Azure ATP portal and make you familiarized with that. We'll also look into the different configuration setting, and should be pretty straightforward, probably 10-15 minutes worth of configuration. We will also see how to install Azure ATP Sensors on a domain controller, and we have talked about what a magnificent job Microsoft has done in improving this ATP sensor from ATP ATA gateways. Please look into my part 1 presentation if you have not seen it. This is a significant change in the solution, and we'll see that. Then we will also look into the Azure ATP logs and the troubleshooting side of it. We will also look into the audit capabilities of Azure ATP, and also obviously we'll look into the different role-based access control settings possible. And once we get there, then we would get right into the fun part of this demo, which would be a actual attack on your Active Directory in action. Right, I'm not going to read all these bullets here, because for many of you it might not make any sense, especially for those folks who are not security specialists. And that's why I would try to make it as simple as possible. But at a very high level, we will do a DNS Reconnaissance attack. We will also do Overpass, where we'll pass the password hash to create a Kerberos ticket granting ticket. Then we will access the resources through this ticket granting ticket, and then finally we will go into the domain escalation path, where we will pass the ticket granting ticket of a privileged identity and get access to the domain controllers. And once we have accomplished that, then we would mask all this attack by the domain dominance process by using the skeleton key. So that's a big picture here. And I know I said I'm not going to read the bullets, but I ended up reading it for you. Finally, we'll see into the solution, right? I want to take an opportunity here to mention two things. Number one is that this demonstration would not have been possible without Microsoft help. As you all know, this is Microsoft Azure ATP still is in a preview mode, and Microsoft was very gracious to allow Logicalis to be first few early adopter of the product, and help us with all the required information and material so that we can pull this demo through. So thank you again to Microsoft. Kudos to them. Kudos to the work that all Microsoft ATA team is doing behind the scene. I mean, they are the real heroes. I'm just trying to present the story here, right? So, and the second point that is equally important here is that we Logicalis do not make any warranties expressed or implied in this presentation. And if you happen to try this product, as always, it is recommended to do this in a controlled environment, in a lab environment or a demonstration environment, and make sure that you're fully aware of the risk involved with this kind of activity. So with that, I also would mention here that some of the tasks that I would be doing in terms of these attacks, the actual commands, I would try to hide that, just to make sure that I do not expose the different attack possibilities to a larger audience, right? I will show the end product, run the command, but actually mask those commands so that it's not exposed publicly, right? So that's the intent, and with that we should just get into the actual demonstration. And in order to understand the demonstration, what I would say here is that we first need to understand what the lab environment we have. So let's quickly peep into. In my lab, I have got a Active Directory forest, Active Directory domain services called as az.local, right? And this lab was built quite a while back to test different Azure products and functionality. That's why AZ stand for Azure. I have got 4 domain controllers here in this lab environment, and if you see on the left hand side, we have got 3 domain controllers. They are sitting in my basement laboratory, and that's why I call them an on-prem. Then I also have 1 domain controller in Azure, and it could be quite confusing, but I just want to make sure that I clarify this here. This is not a requirement for the solution. This is not a prerequisite of ATP. This is how my lab has been set up for a variety of other testing that I do for my company and for my customers, right? So leave aside this right hand box, that's not required, but that's my lab as of now. Now, out of these 4 domain controllers, the domain controller DC01, DC02 and DC03, they already have Azure ATP Sensor installed, so that's up and running, and I have been testing the solution to bring it to you guys. So that's up and running. I left the DC04 intact so that we can see the actual installation process of Azure ATP Sensor and make you familiarized with that. And in addition to that, we have got 2 workstations. One is a admin workstation and second is a client workstation. Now we will be playing around here, and we will be orchestrating our attack here. Now, in order to do this attack, we have taken into account for 3 different user identities. One is Jeff victim. As the name suggests, this is the end user who has been a victim of phishing email. And when I talk about phishing email, I want to take this opportunity to mention that I had presented another video on phishing email attacks and Microsoft Office 365 ATP, and if you have not watched that video, I strongly recommend you to do that. I will try to post the links in the comment section. And the fact of the matter is that if this organization would have used Office 365 ATP, so there were good chances that this attack would have never even be possible. But never mind, assume that this Jeff victim identity have already been compromised. And the second identity that we have in this lab scenario is Ron Temske. I think I should fix it here. This is not a domain admin. This is actually a help desk member, right? So apologies, I think I made a mess here. This is a member of a help desk, and then this help desk group that we have here has already been added to the local administrators group of both the workstation, and that's generally what happens in any real production environment. And finally, we have this user which is Nuck White, who is an actual domain admin that operates from this admin workstation, right? So 3 identities, 2 workstation, 1 Active Directory for a single domain AD forest. That's the lab environment that we have. And when we talk about this anatomy of this attack that we are going to demonstrate today, this is how I plan to do that. As I said, Jeff victim ID has already been compromised. So the hacker takes into account this identity, gets into this client workstation and start doing this attack. And as many of you already know that many times when this phishing email attack happens, to see the final attack on the environment, it might take about 180 to 200 days. And this is where this whole attack actually is being constituted. Now, once the hacker gets Jeff victim, he gets into this workstation, and then the first thing that he tries to do is he tries to do an overpass the password hash, or to be more precise, the NTLM password hash. He tries to steal that NTLM password hash from the memory on this client workstation of Ron Temske, right? And he is going very methodically, step by step, going up, right? Or rather, I should take a step back. Before even he does that, he does a DNS Reconnaissance attack, try to get all the IPs and device information in your environment. And once, if he is successful with that, then he already knows all the IPs and all the devices. The second thing that he would do from there probably would go and try to get this NTLM password hash of around 10k, and once he gets that, then he would inject that NTLM password hash to create a Kerberos ticket granting ticket. Many of us who are in Active Directory space are familiar with this TGT. That's how the Active Directory authentication process works, right? So this ticket granting ticket would allow Ron Temske, or in this case Jeff Victim, who is using that ticket granting ticket of Ron Temske, to get access to the admin workstation. So what we have done here is, now the hacker has been able to get from the client PC to the admin workstation. And remember, on admin workstation we have got the domain admin logged in, right? So he has completed the first level of attack to get to that level, and that is what is an overpass the hash that we have mentioned in our slide deck. Now, as soon as he get into this admin workstation, the next thing that, or next level of attack this hacker is going to do is to try to steal all the ticket granting ticket sessions on that admin workstation. And as you know, Nanak White has logged in there. So once he get all the Kerberos ticket for Nanak White, he can pass those tickets, and now he has escalated himself to the domain escalation path, which is the second attack that we talked about. So as a result of this domain escalation, as a result of stealing those ticket granting ticket of Nanak White, this hacker now is in a position to get sessions on the domain controllers, right? And that's what he is trying to do. Once he has access to the domain controllers, that means he has pretty much access to all the machines in the environment using the same ticket granting ticket. But the user is not gonna, this hacker is not gonna stop here. And in order to mask all these attacks from any security monitoring and whatnot, what this user or what this hacker would do is that he will go to a level ahead. This is the third layer, where he would do the domain dominance. And in the domain dominance, this user, or this hacker to be precise, would try to get an skeleton key of your Active Directory domain. And skeleton key is actually a kind of a master password. Now going forward, when he needs to do any damage in your environment, he doesn't need to worry about TGT or ticket granting ticket session. He can run as any identity in the environment with the password, the skeleton key that he already obtained, right? That's what this attack is all about, right? And as I said, it's not a rocket science. It's a very methodical way of doing it, and it's kind of scary, of course it is. But at the same time, the point of this presentation and demo is that, all right, this can happen to any organization. It's just a matter of time when it happens. But the point is that whether Microsoft Azure ATP can prevent or can alert in a timely fashion to the administrator to take the corrective action, right? Now, this is the world that we all live into, right? We have to accept and realize that. But at the same time, if we are diligent, if we are smart, and if we get this information in a timely fashion, we can take the corrective action to prevent any damages to your organization, right? And that is the premise that I promised in my part 1 presentation, and hopefully I would be able to demonstrate to you. Now that's why I think it's going to be very exciting demonstration, folks here. Once again, recapitulate the threat process here, because it's lengthy, and I just want to make sure that everybody gets it. Jeff Victim identity has already been compromised as a result of phishing email. He goes, as a hacker goes, uses Jeff Victim identity and tries to steal or tries to get the NTLM password hash of Ron Temske, who is a help desk guy. And because of the help desk guy, he has the administrative privileges on both the workstation. As soon as he gets the ticket granting ticket of Ron Temske, he has established a session on the admin workstation. And once he gets to the admin workstation, obviously now he is going to start looking for the second layer of attack, where he would try to steal the Kerberos ticket of the domain admin Nanak White. And once he gets that, then he has the ability to use that ticket granting ticket to access any machine or even domain controllers. Now, because he has already perpetuated this huge attack, he is going to mask this attack, make it simple, and do the domain dominance, where he is going to get the skeleton key in your Active Directory and use that skeleton key going forward to do any further damage, right? He can use that password that he obtains through that to log in with any ID that he likes to get into that. So that's the picture. And now let's before I actually get into the attack, let's get into the portal, the Azure ATP portal, as per our slide deck that I presented the agenda. So I'm gonna close this here, save it. All right, so now let's get to the portal here, and let me get to the configuration. So when as you see here that Azure Advanced Threat Protection is still in the preview mode, Microsoft team is working feverishly to bring it up to the GA level. Hopefully we'll hear those dates soon. And um, there are a lot of efforts that Microsoft is putting to get the feature sets up to the mark as per the ATA, right? So all the functionality and feature sets of ATA is being injected into ATP. So that is work in progress. But once you get your Azure Advanced Threat Protection in your Azure tenant, you would be, once you get in there, you would be required to create a workspace. And you can create as many workspaces as you want. Many of us who work in Azure are already familiar of this importance and the concept behind the workspace. I'm not going to delve into that in a greater length, but you can have these different workspaces for different purposes, for different departments, for different locations, and one more thing, that if you have a multiple forest environment, you may need a separate workspace for each forest, because as far as my understanding is, right now Azure ATP does not support multi-forest environment, right? So hoping that you have already created your workspace. I already did, and as a result we get to the next level, where we would be required to add our directory services or add our Active Directory forest here. In order to do that, the only requirement here is that we would need a domain user account. This should not be a privileged account. This should not be a privileged identity. What I mean by that, it should not be a domain admin or enterprise admin or any admin. It should be just a normal user. And that's what we did here. We are using in this demonstration atp.user, and I'm going to show you that this user is only a member of domain user group, period. Right now, once we do that, the Azure ATP engine would be able to read Active Directory, right? Basically, this ATP user account would be used to read all Active Directory objects, users and groups, etc., right? That's all this account does. Now, just to make sure that I'm not lying here to you, I just want to show you that this particular account is just a member of domain user group, right? So let's see it. Now you'll see that the Active Directory forest is az.local, as you see on the top. You're going to search for this user here. And here you go. And as I promised, this should only be the member of domain users, right? That's all the requirement is. So I think anybody from security side should be comfortable using this account. Now, once we understood that, going back to the portal here, right? So now we have added our directory services. There is a couple of other additional configuration that we need to do. The first important thing that has to be done in order to make the solution work is to deploy the sensors, right? And I talked about these ATP sensors compared to the conventional ATA, Azure Advanced Threat Analytics gateways, and that what work Microsoft has done in order to make it really optimal and usable by majority of enterprises and organizations, because the compute requirement for Azure ATP has significantly been changed and significantly has been reduced, almost about 0.3% of CPU utilization compared to 75.5% utilization of ATA gateways, and also the memory that was required almost about 8 gig with ATA has now been dropped to about 1.8 gig, right? So that's a significant work that has been done by Microsoft ATA team, and kudos to them, and we really appreciate all the hard work that Microsoft has done. As I mentioned that I have already installed the ATP sensors on the 3 domain controllers, and the 1 domain controller that is left for this demo will install it there in few minutes. But I also want to show you that if you decide to delete it, you can just go ahead and delete it, straightforward. And one important thing to note here, once you go into this domain controller here, you will see here a button called as a domain synchronizer candidate. You don't need to turn this on for all the domain controllers. You can pick up one of those domain controllers that would be the kind of a interface that would be talking to Azure ATP engine, right? So you don't need to turn it on for everyone. Pick up one of the domain controller that would be transmitting all the data to Azure ATP. So if you see here, I'm not using any of the other domain controllers here, right? Please straightforward. And as far as the installation of ATP sensors are concerned, again, it couldn't be simpler than that. You can just click the button download on a domain controller and then use this access key. All of us are familiar with Azure and what this key does and what this key has to do with encryption. Basically, once you download it, you can install it. One of the prerequisite that I would suggest that you should consider right here, this is the domain controller, that you need to have .NET components installed, right? I would say install for .NET 3.5 as well as 4.5 and 4.7 too. So that's a prerequisite and very straightforward. Once you do that, you download it. I already downloaded it here. I unzip that, and if you see here, this should have 2 files, Azure ATP sensor setup, and then we have a JSON file here. Now the JSON file is being used for all the required configuration for letting this domain controller registered with Azure ATP and talk to ATP, but so we don't really need to go into that. We can just double click this and it should kick our installation for Azure ATP sensor, right? Excuse me. So there is a as you know, in ATA you have got ATA lightweight gateways as well as ATA gateways here. So we'll see how does it reflect here in ATP. You choose your language. For me, English is a great language. And then I'm going to go here and click next. So this is what I was talking about. If you see this, the option that has been enabled here is sensor, because ATP installation file has already detected this as a domain controller. Had this not be a domain controller and had it be a regular member server or a workgroup server, then we will get the option which is grayed out here for standalone sensor, right? And when you do this standalone sensor, you have the similar requirement that you had for ATA for port mirroring and WEF, I mean Windows event forwarding kind of a story there. So we are not doing in this demonstration here, because I personally feel that because of the lesser requirement of compute on our domain controller, this should work for most of our customer. I personally feel that with the improvement that has been made on ATP sensor, installing this ATP sensor on a domain controller would not be a big deal, and most of our customers and enterprises would be able to do that, right? My domain controllers here are running only about 4 gig of RAM, right? Now, if I can do that, and of course this is a lab environment, so I'm not naive to say that I have the same traffic and same network data as you will have in your production environment, but it's just doable. And that's the value proposition behind it. As I said, average system admin should be able to deploy it without worrying about, hey, I need to do a network mirroring, I need to understand Windows and event forwarding, I just need to do all the firewall configuration between ATP center and ATP gateways and SIM database. So all that complexity planning disappears just by utilizing the benefits of improved ATP sensors here, right? Next, and the only thing that it needs is that passphrase, which I have already copied here on this machine. If it can open it for me, there you go. Paste and click this install. Sit back, probably another 2 or 3 minutes. This installation should be done, and that's all team we have to do it here, right? That's all is required to do in terms of installing the ATP sensors here, right? While this is in a progress, I can go back, take the advantage and continue the demonstration here. Now, as it is being installed, I can go into the updates to show you what the options are. And if you see here, on the first option is update all sensors automatically. For me, this is no brainer because, as I mentioned, Microsoft is still working to update this product and keep adding additional functionality and features to match it up with the ATA. So for me, that just is a no-brainer. The second option, I have chosen it and turned it on to automatically restart domain controllers, right, on which the server is installed. In your production, you might have to think about it because most likely you would not like to have an uncontrolled reboot of your domain controllers, right? But straightforward. You already see this AGDLC04 is coming up, the one that we started installing. It doesn't take that too long. If I go back to the sensors here, this should be coming here in any minute. Let's go back into the domain controller and see it's already here. It's up and running, already done, right? So how many minutes it took, folks? Maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. I'm just going to reboot this domain controller. Just restarted it. Now, so once we understood the installation of ATP sensors, then we need to look into some other additional optional configurations. So look here, we have got an option to include SIM. If your organization is using SIM could be integrated into this solution. And what it means, I can turn this on and SIM could be configured with ATP. That means all the events could be forwarded from SIM databases to ATP, and ATP would talk back to the SIM database as well, so keep it up to date. And that's the value proposition that the ATP comes with. I don't have SIM, I'm not going to demonstrate it here. Similarly, for the VPN, if you have to excuse me, if you have to cover the VPN network traffic, also you can turn the radius accounting on. In my lab, we are not doing it here, right? And immediately moving into the entity tags here, where you can enable the monitoring of the Honey token accounts. And many of you may already be familiar with Honey token accounts. Those who do not know Honey token accounts are those accounts which are lucrative to the hackers, but in general they should not be used for a regular logon to the workstation, right? For an example, SQL admin or server admin, something like that, right? So we can enable those, and I did an administrator. If you see here, this is a sensitive account too, right? And you can add those Honey token accounts here. Then goes to the sensitive accounts and group, and this is interesting because now in an organization, besides this sensitive groups that ATP engine automatically detects, let me just show you what I mean. So if I say admin here, right, you will see this green sign here with S. Those are the sensitive groups that has been already identified by the ATP engine. I really don't have to do anything around it, but you can add additional security groups and account as a sensitive account. So just to make sure that I can simplify that, you could have your CIO or CEO or CFO or even CTO who has got access to some of the very highly classified data in your organization. And that's why you just want to make sure that you take special care of these folks and we monitor them, right? And those accounts would be given those privileges and access with the help of some special security groups. So you can add those sensitive accounts and sensitive groups here, and ATP would take care of that. If you modify those sensitive groups because of any reason, it will also give you a report, which we are going to see in next minute or so, right? And because that account that we added for the Active Directory, it can read the Active Directory. If you try to put couple of names here, first two or three letters here, it will start showing you the different accounts here, right? Automatically. If I say AT, that will show me my account here, all account related to that. It's pretty neat and clean work. Same thing like if I do any security group here, let's say I do, right? So I get all these accounts here, the groups here, right? So very, very straightforward. I don't need to go further more into that. You guys are smart. You know what I'm talking about. You can also exclude certain IPs, certain subnets and computers out of ATP scanning process or analyzing process to avoid false alerts, to avoid some annoying notifications. And again, this is self-intuitive. Once you get access to that, you have got multiple choices here. I'm not going to read all of them and bore you with that. They are self-explanatory. And again, this is where you can customize your solution to make sure you do not get the false alerts and you do not get annoying notification, right? Many of you might have familiarity with the Microsoft System Center Operations Manager, or SCOM. And one of the key that I have observed in the deployment of SCOM over the last 14-15 years of my consulting experience is that if the SCOM is not configured properly, it creates a event storm. And initially customer says, okay, wow, I'm getting all these events and I'm getting email notification or even the text messages and whatnot. But when you start getting every 30 seconds, then that's what I call an event storm, and then you lose the importance, and after 2 or 3 months, the SCOM becomes almost useless because people are say, okay, I can't handle this. So that's where this false alerts and alerts and notification comes into picture. Don't undermine the importance of these exclusions in my personal way, because if you start getting those events and those alerts every single 30 seconds or 40 seconds or every minute, then you would not give any importance to that, right? So that's extremely important. Now, going into the notification and reports, obviously you choose your language. English is my language here, living in the United States, but you have got other languages here. And at this point, I can also mention that Microsoft is working to add this functionality and feature into more Azure data center as we talk about. And this list is growing as everyday progress is here, right? Notifications, you can do the notifications to the email. You can also do the syslog notifications. So both options are possible. You can do new alerts are detected or health issue is detected. You can choose multiple email addresses. I think it's no-brainer here. You can configure your syslog. Very, very simple to do that. And just to give you a flavor of these reports or these alert notification, let me just show you the schedule report, then I'll show you that. So you can schedule these reports to be sent daily or weekly or however you like to do that, right? And very simple, you can get the summary report, you can get the sensitive groups I mentioned earlier, and you can also say password exposed in the clear text, right? Now you will see that the reports would get into my email. Let me see if I can show you a couple of them. Let me bring this here. And look here that ATP is reporting, right? Azure Advanced Threat Protection. This is the clear text password report that we got, right? And then we will, I'm not showing it, right? Now, similarly, we have the reports for the daily modification of the sensitive group, the daily summary report. It gives you the Excel spreadsheet and it gives you the link as well, right? So I think Microsoft has done a real good job here that make it really usable, because if you go and find something and you need to see actually what happened, you can go into the details to the Excel file, and even in Excel file you have a link that would take you back to the ATP portal, right? That's pretty impressive. You have a report for honey token activity, remote execution has happened, and identity theft. This is what I was testing a few days back, so let's just show you quickly. And identity theft has happened, and this is what we are going to do in next few minutes, folks. So look here, this is what happened. Not white Kerberos ticket was stolen from the EMS TST02, which is the admin workstation, to AZ help desk, which is the PC of the client PC and used to access for resources. Huh. Now, if you get this information in a timely fashion as an system admin, forget about CISO or forget about security. Would it not be helpful for you and your organization? That is the value proposition I'm talking about, right? So with that, let's go back to the portal again. So you've got a lot of reports coming in here, right? Reconnaissance DNS attack using first pass the ticket attack, which is what I talked about earlier, right? So encryption downgrade activity. This is the overpass attack, where this hacker was getting into the admin session, or sorry, the TGT ticket on admin workstation, right? It is very intuitive. It is extremely helpful in my viewpoint, and that's the reason that I'm excited about this project, right? And especially if you guys look into that, how much effort you had to do here in terms of deployment of this solution. Maybe 10-15 minutes of configuration, installing it in your domain controller, depending on the size of your environment, may take some time, and you could use other tools like group policies or system center to push your ATP sensors there, right? So the whole effort, you don't really need to plan a lot here. One domain controller is the domain synchronizer, right? You just need to make sure when we do the domain synchronizer, you need to make sure that the firewall is configured properly so that ATP sensor can talk to all the ports required for DNS and NetBIOS and the queries and the file servers and SMB, right? So that's where you need to just make sure that the firewall is properly configured, your auditing on your domain controller is properly configured. But other than that, that's the regular work that we do, right? And by putting, let's say, even an hour into this solution, maybe 2 hours into this solution, maybe taking into the consideration lot many domain controllers there, I think that is worth to have the functionality and peace of mind that, hey, somebody is watching for me, somebody is looking if my Active Directory is being invaded, and I have the ability, if something happens terribly wrong, that I can take corrective actions, right? So that's the point. And at the same time, it's also learning the machine behavior. I'm only talking about one small subset of attack here, guys. But the implication of ATP is much wider, because it is doing the all network traffic analysis, just not the hacker. Your average users are accessing something, clear text password is happening, how the users are accessing different drives, how the users are going to the internet. That is all being learned and kept and analyzed at the same time. So let's not just confine ourselves into one single attack that I am just talking about, right? I'm intrigued by seeing that attack, of course I am, but that's not the overall picture. The product covers a wide range of area and provides organization the true roadmap and true organizational structure, and keep you aware about what is actually happening in your environment. And that is the value proposition that Azure ATP does. I did a lot of talking here. Let's get into the actual attack now. Before I get to the attack, let me just show you the role-based access control and logs and whatnot, right? So I hope I'm still logged in as, okay, great, awesome. So users and group, this is, we are into the tenant Azure Active Directory. I don't need to go into details of Azure Active Directory, maybe sometime later. But one thing that is important to talk about, that because Azure ATP is being deployed uh, from the Azure itself, and instead of having your ATP ATS center in your on-prem infrastructure, now you have the ability to manage not only your on-prem identities but also your cloud identities, which I believe is a significant advantage of using Azure ATP, right? So let's look into our role-based access control. Three different layers. One is Azure ATP Administrator, straightforward. This is the highest account in the Azure ATP, can do all the configuration, can assign the users to different groups and kind of a permissions and delegation. Then you have Azure ATP users who have access, they have the configuration rights on Azure ATP. And finally, you have Azure ATP viewers who can get access to the portal but would not be able to do anything related to the configuration. Simple, straightforward. I don't think that it needs any further explanation. Same thing here. If you go into the audit logs here, you can see what this account that you're using for managing ATP, what are the activities, for example, add members to the group or whatever. You can refresh it, you can apply it, you can even download the reports here. So auditing capability that I'm talking about is on Azure ATP itself, right? I'm not talking about audit capabilities on your Active Directory here. So that's straightforward. And as far as the logs and troubleshooting is concerned, let's just go dive into there as well. Let's see, go here, DC03. All right, so the logs are located in this location. Bring it up. So when you need to troubleshoot it, you can work on these logs and also work with Microsoft as always. Sorry, it's a little slow here. So Azure Advanced Threat Protection Sensor, no brainer here. And then you will see the logs here as well once I get into the folder. I don't know why it's so slow. Sorry about that again. And these are the folders. The latest one is right here. And within that you will see the log folder, and that's where you get to the logs. And you can work with the logs right here. And then you can troubleshoot that and take Microsoft help if you need to, right? But in my viewpoint, this is very straightforward. With that, I think we have covered a few things here. We have covered the ATP portal, we have covered the configuration of ATP, we have covered ATP sensor deployment, we have covered the role-based access control, we have covered the auditing of ATP, we also covered the different log files that you can get into for further troubleshooting. So we have covered that area completely. Now I think the fun starts now when we are gonna try to attack it, and let's get right into that. So now we need to work on those two workstations, right? This is my admin workstation, and then I have a client workstation right here. And as I said, on these two workstations, the help desk group has been added to the local admin group, right? So let's dive into that. And the first attack, as we talked about, would be a DNS reconnaissance attack, and then we will build up the attack all the way to the first level, second level, and third level. First level being overpass, the hash. The second level would be pass the ticket and domain escalation, and third would be the domain dominance by getting the skeleton key, right? So we'll see that. Let's get right into this. So I have got Jeff victim, who is the account, but what I would also prefer to do this time, that I would log on first as Ron Temske, who is our help desk guy, not a domain admin. And why I'm doing that, you will realize it in few minutes, that I need to get his credentials, his NTLM hash into the memory. That once I get as Jeff, I want to steal that, right? That's the purpose of this step here. Good, awesome. Now let's get to the switch user, and I'm gonna go as Jeff, right? So now we are ready to do a DNS reconnaissance attack, but before I do that, I just want to go to the portal and close my existing logs here or events here. So honey token activity, you see that this has been happening, though I am not logging on as an administrator anymore, but this is still getting me messages here. I'm closed, but encryption downgrade activity, this has happened in past. I'm gonna close it here too, and it will reappear once we get here, right? So remote execution, I'm gonna close this here. This is our past testing. Identity theft that I was doing yesterday, I'm gonna close this as well, right? Encryption downgrade, I'm gonna close this as well, and reconnaissance attack, I'm gonna close this as well, right? These are all gone. We're gonna see new events going off forward here. Okay, that's our help desk guy, and here he goes, and he wants to see the information from our DNS, right? So it should be very straightforward. NS lookup. How many of you are not familiar with NS lookup? Okay, ls-d, and my domain is az.local. So we are trying to get all the information about az.local from DNS, and at this point this user doesn't have the rights on that Active Directory. So if he tries to attack it, that should fail. Actually, the query should be refused. Now ATP should be, the expected behavior is that ATP should immediately recognize that. In a real scenario of the hacking, once the user get access to that domain admin level, the domain escalation, then he should be able to do that without any problem, because then he has the rights there, right? So at this point, I expect this query to be refused. Here you go, right? That's as per the expectation. Having said that, because all this network traffic is being analyzed by the ATP engine, I think we should be able to see this DNS reconnaissance attack coming here any second. Here you go. And I mentioned to you that this is happening in the real time. This is what is very important, my friends, here. Because now we know that somebody actually tried to attack and tried to get our which machine, which PC, the client PC, which domain controller, DC02, which is our domain controller. That's what he tried to do that. And now you know that. Now if it's a genuine request, you can probably close it, right? And say, okay, I don't care, I need to ignore it. right? But if it is a real attack, then you know that hey, something is fishy, and you got to be more careful about it, and you start taking your corrective actions. Now, this was the first attack, right? We just proved it. I think it should also send an email momentarily. I don't know whether I have received it or not, but hopefully I should. Here you go. So not only you have to sit all the time on the portal and keep your eyes centered, you will receive an email immediately that hey, as a notification message, if something is happening, right? So you are aware of that, what's going on. This is very important in my viewpoint, because if you are aware of your environment and what's happening and what's not happening, you are well prepared to take right action. If you do not know, then well, then there's nothing much you can do unless you really got the damage done, right? So that's the point. Now, once we have proven the first level of attack, now we're gonna build this attack to the next layer. And as I promised, the next layer would be what? We would be doing the overpassing the anti-LM password hash to create a ticket granting ticket session on the admin workstation, right? So the way I would do is that I have a tool that I would go and read in the memory and create a text file of all these hashes. And once I have the hash, I would inject that hash into a ticket and create a ticket granting ticket so that I have a session on the admin workstation. That's our first layer of attack, and or rather that's our second, because first we already did with the domain reconnaissance. And what would happen with this overpass attack, we might not see that event right away into ATP portal. This event has been suppressed by ATP engine deliberately for 2 hours. It will take about 2 hours to show it up, so I may not be able to see it right away. You may not be able to see it right away, just to make sure that we do not get, the false alarms here. That's the reason, right? So let's see how it goes, and maybe it proves me wrong. Maybe Microsoft has changed something there. All right, so going back to the workstation, and I'm gonna get out of here. And before I do that, let's just make sure I can log on and I have the captured the credentials here. Excuse me. I'm trying to get the latest token of this ticket granting ticket for Nuck Fight here that we will steal in few minutes. And folks, as I mentioned, I'm going to hide these commands. Once you get my video, this would be all blackened here, because I don't want anybody to see this, how this attack is perpetuated. You just need to see that this is possible, this happens, and trust me, there are only few command lines that I would have to run. It's not I have to rewrite the whole program from the scratch, right? So just bear with me. All right. So at this point, what we are trying to do, folks, here is we are trying to create a text file with the anti-LM password hash, right? That's all we are trying to do. All right, so we can look into the file now. That I can show you. So in the temp folder, we created a file called the victimpc.txt. Look at the timestamp here, 7:37 a.m. Right? We just did that. And if you're on Tamsky, and we have stolen the NTLM password hash right here. This is what we're gonna use it right in our next command. Basically, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And as I mentioned, our next attack here is to take this NTLM password hash and create a ticket granting ticket that would give us a session on the admin workstation, right? That's my next task. So let's do that. All right, so I have the command completed. Let's see what happens. Now, if you see guys, I am logged in into the new session here. If I do the K list here, all right, so now we have made a session um, into the admin workstation. So the first layer of attack, by overpassing the NTLM hash to generate a ticket granting ticket and complete a session on the admin workstation, is completed. We might not see this event yet into the ATP portal, because as I said, it might take up to 2 hours to show it up here as per a deliberate delay in capturing that and showing this event to avoid any false alarm here, right? So we'll wait for that, and once it shows up, then probably I'll show that event as well. Now, so this is as expected. Perfect. Now what we're going to try to do here is, because as of now, if I log on as Jeff and try to access the admin workstation, I should be asked for credentials, because Jeff itself should not have any rights, right? And as expected, it is asking for credentials. By the way, just to make sure that we are hitting the right admin workstation, I'm using 159 an IP address, and let's make sure that we have the right IP address here. That's the admin workstation, folks, and this is 159, right? But because we have established the ticket granting ticket now, right? So we should be able to get to the C drive in that session. One sec. So where are we? Right here. Okay. So to prove that we have access to that admin workstation, I can try to see the C drive, which I just proved that as a user I should not be able to see that. Maybe. Hold on one second. So guys, as you see, the problem that I had, that's why it was saying the access denied, that in my last command here, I made a small mistake, right? So instead of doing az.local, I just didn't add the last L into that. That's why I was not getting the right session here. But now you see that with this, you can get access to that session. And one more time to prove that I don't have access as Jeff victim to that admin workstation, but because I'm logged into this session with this ticket granting ticket, proper ticket granting ticket, I now have access to the admin workstation. I can get to the C drive. So as I said, the first level of attack is now completed. We're going to go to the second level of attack, which is domain escalation. And now we are trying to steal the Nuck White, who is our domain admin, tickets. And when I say ticket, these are Kerberos tickets. So this is the next level of attack that we're going to do. We're going to copy our files over there, on the admin workstation and execute a remote command on admin workstation to export all the Kerberos ticket on that workstation, right? I'm going to hide that task again and we'll show you the actual product. All right. So what we just did it, we copied the file over there and then we're going to run the PowerShell command again, right? We're going to pause it. So folks, I was able to do that. I was able to copy this file here and then I was able to export all the tickets, Kerberos ticket on that machine, right? And the one that I'm more interested into is the Kerberos ticket for NUC White. We're going to use these tickets and get to the next level of attack, which is what, so we exported that as a hacker. Now we're going to go into the domain escalation and pass this Kerberos ticket. And once we have that ticket granting ticket session, then we can get to the next layer where we would be able to get to the domain controllers, right? That's our next level of task. So let's try to do that now. I'm going to pause and then come back in a second. Just copy. So folks, I have copied these 4 files on my local client PC. These 4 files, let's just look into these 4 files. It should be sitting in my temp folder. And here are those 4 files. As I said, I'm only needing these 2 files, the Kerberos tickets. So I don't need these 2 remaining files. I can delete them and leave these 2 files. And now I'm going to go to the domain escalation. I'm going to pass this ticket as NUC White and get into that session, right? That's the objective here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pause and come back in a second. All right, folks, so I have completed the task, and now what happens is with this few PowerShell commands, I was able to get into pass the ticket and stole the ticket granting ticket for NUC White, right? See here, I got the ticket here. I passed this ticket. Now because of this ticket, I have the ability to get a session on domain controllers. So the second level of attack is almost completed. I have the ticket, so domain escalation is already performed. And now if I try to do this and try to get to a domain controller, which I should not have an access to, then now I would have that access. So let's try to go to a domain controller and see if I can get to the C drive, right? We are going to AGDLC03, which is a domain controller, and see if, here you go. So now what I did is that I stole the ticket of the domain admin and I got right into the domain controller. Now I can do anything that I like and go any machine with this remote control, and if I have the remote tools to remote commands to run, I can run commands on every single machine now. Now at this point, I hope to see a event in in the portal. Right, so we have the domain controller now, and while this is, we are waiting for that event to show up momentarily here. Honey token activity. All right, what we can also do is now we can go to the third layer of attack, which is the domain dominance, where we would try to get a skeleton key out of the domain and then use that key going forward and mask all the mask all the attack that we have done so far. So I'm going to pause it again and come back once I am ready with that scenario. So folks, as I promised that once we did that, once we started accessing the domain controller, we have the event alert here. A new event for identity theft has already happened, right? And that's what I promised you. So if you look here, this has just happened 7:59 a.m. This is 8:03 a.m. right here as of now. right? So we got this event here. It started from the admin workstation, right, to AZ help desk, which is the PC, client PC, and it has already accessed the 6 resources, because if you go back into the console here in the machine here, I try to access the resources on DC04, I try to access the resources on DC03, DC02, and then I copied a file there too on DC03, right? So that's what you have got 6 attacks, 6 places that it has already gone, right? Sharing violation. See here, I copied this file here, and that's what we need to do. Now we need to go to the domain dominance attack, third attack, where I would get a master key or a skeleton key in the environment. I swear to God, that scares the hell out of me, but let's see there. Okay, I'm gonna pause it one more time, run the PowerShell command, come back here. All right, folks, so coming back, that identity theft event that I was mentioning about has happened. And if you look into this, is happened at 8:14 a.m. That's the time that we were working on. Right now in my time is 8:17. It has reported. It happens from EMS TST02, which is the admin workstation, goes to the AZ help desk. 7 resources have been accessed so far. It gives you all the details here. If I click here, right, DC03, DC02, because the reason that happened, if I can show you, that when I went there, I was trying to access all the domain controllers one by one, and as a result, I got that I tried to access the resources 04, 03, 02, and as a result, we have that event showing up there. Now, after I did that, I also did another activity, that I ran the remote execution, which was done on, let's see here, and that means I ran the PowerShell command, or I ran the remote command on a domain controller remotely. That's the report that I got right here. And on top of it, I also was able to do the domain dominance attack. As a result, I got the skeleton key now, and the skeleton key is the one that scares the most out of me, because if you see here, I launched the as an administrator here, and see how I launched it. If I go back down here, I ran run as, and that's the command I ran as, run as, and let me just get here. So run as user az administrator cmd.exe, right? And throughout this process, we were not using this account, guys. Now I was able to log on as an administrator with the skeleton password. That's what I'm talking about. Let me show you one more time here. Let me close this window here, right? And then run this command again, so that I'm running as administrator. It's going to ask me for password, and I'm not typing actually the administrator password. I'm typing the new password, skeleton password. I wish I could show you that, and it should launch the window right here. So we have perpetuated the complete attack, right from starting from the DNS Reconnaissance attack. Then we went into, overpassing the NTLM password hash, generated the ticket granting ticket to get the session on the admin workstation. That's the second attack. And once we did the second attack, then we went into the stole the keys of Nuck White, who was our domain admin, get into his ticket session. As a result, then we were able to get to the domain controllers. We put our executable on the domain controller, and then we ran the remote command on the domain controller to get the third attack, which was the domain dominance attack, and we got the skeleton key as well. And as a result of a skeleton key, now this is all masked. Going forward, I can use that password with any account that I want to use in the environment. and that is what this whole attack was all about. Now if you see that I should also have received an email alert for this identity theft, right? So remote execution happened and identity theft also happened. If you look into this email, right, we have this look here, take a look, and it will take you back to the portal here. Basically this is what it is trying to do, right? It's going to ask me to where do you want to go, and if I use my account here, that's what you can see that. So that's another feature that I talked about, that within the email you can see that. I'm going to close it here, or you can look into the Excel spreadsheet here, right? It gives you the detail, what time it happened, what happened, how, and it also has a link in the browser too, right? And then it's gonna take you back here. Okay, I'm not gonna wait for this, but that's all we have in this live demonstration, right? Is right here. And before I conclude this session, I just want to show you one more thing here, the clear text password. I was testing it yesterday, so if I can show you that report, right, the passwords in the clear text. Right, it gives you that report too. So pretty intuitive and pretty helpful, my friends. And I hope I have accomplished what I was trying to do, and give you a real-time attack, show you the events that is happening, and that 2-hour event is still awaited, right? But let's go back here one more time into the events, and we have also seen this encryption downgrade activity. That was when we did the skeleton key, right? The only thing that we are still awaiting was the overpass hash. That would take about 2 hours, but you will also see that we were able to do, see here, that's scary stuff, my friends. But the good news is that ATP was able to detect it, and because we were able to detect it, now we have the ability to take the corrective actions, right? And protect our organizations effectively. To me, and I don't know how you feel about it, but to me it gives me peace of mind that, hey, somebody is watching for me, somebody is watching my back, and in my environment I know if there is an attack going to happen, if somebody is going to use a password in clear text, if somebody is going to modify my sensitive group, if the users are going to do something funky, I know I will be immediately informed. And as a result, as an organization, we are much safer, we are protected, we can take a sigh of relief here. With that, I want to thank you all for watching this long video. I'm sorry it could not be shorter than this, because I really showed you a live attack. Hopefully you found it effective, you found it impressive, you find it as excited as I am, and you would be able to take the solution and use it either in your own organization, or as a partner. If you're a partner, you can deploy it on your customer's organization. I also want to inform you that my next presentation would be on a live demonstration, similar live demonstration, again, very, very rich, I promise you that. And that would be on privilege access management from Microsoft, which is we call as a PAM. That would also include JIA, that is just in-time administration, as well as JEA, which is just enough administration. These things are very interesting, my friend. If you are really interested and you like it, I'm sure you would also like my next presentation on PAM. Stay tuned. And again, thank you so very much for watching this. Again, can't thank you enough for giving your valuable time, almost an hour time, hour plus time. Appreciate a lot. Have a best of your day, please. Bye-bye.